5 main archetypes.
Right.
As we dive into ourselves and get to know ourselves and start to, explore our own inner life, inner world, our unconscious, right? There are different layers of depths that we meet, right? And so
what are these 5 archetypes?
So the first one he says is, first one, there's no real particular order, but let's say the orders that bring us into deeper depths.
Okay.
Right? He calls is the persona.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So these are the different masks that we wear in order to be able to socialize.
Right.
Right? Each situation, social situation we're in, the pressure, the social pressures of the situation push us to play a certain role.
Right.
And it's normal. We wouldn't be able to communicate without these roles.
Yeah,
right? And
definitely. And to do certain things that are necessary in the world that we live, that's always changing and always.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at our lives, we have different kinds of relationships and different ways of being in these different relationships, right? We're a certain way of being with our parents. We're a certain way of being with our intimate partner. We're a certain way of being with, our friends, our children, or at work. Do you know, for example, if you imagine the persona of the policeman, he plays a certain role. He puts on, a costume, puts on the hat, puts on the badge, then he becomes a policeman, right? When he takes off the badge, he takes off the hat, he takes off the policeman's attitude, and he becomes a normal human being again.
Right.
Right? He wouldn't properly be able to, be with his friends if he was being in the policeman role. Let's say he meets his childhood buddies.
Yeah.
Right?
It wouldn't work.
No, it wouldn't work at all. He wouldn't be able to be that way with his kids. He wouldn't be able to be that way with his wife.
Right.
Right? So it becomes problematic when the person's idea of themselves is attached or revolves around their persona. Then there's a kind of confusion, right? There's a tension that gets created,
Right.
Where they can't let go of that role.
Yeah.
Because if they're trying to be in that role in a situation where that role is inappropriate, well, it's just not it's not going to go well for them.
Yeah.
So essentially the persona mediates. It's like an archetype that mediates the outside world. It's the first level, outside and the inside.
Okay.
Right? And the first layer of the inside is the archetype he calls of the ego.
Okay, yeah.
Now, the ego, Jung has a particular way of speaking about the ego, which is different than we see in the spiritual traditions.
In the New Age.
Yeah, so he believes that the ego is a positive force and it needs to be fortified. We need to have a strong, healthy ego.
Okay.
Because the ego is essentially our sense of I-ness, right? And that allows a feeling of integration and essentially a feeling that we exist. Right. And we need to feel that we exist to be able to think properly, to be able to make decisions, to be able to...
The ego makes us individual, basically.
Sure, yeah. It differentiates, between you and me. It allows us to place boundaries and know what belongs to you, what belongs to me. And also differentiate the inner movements within, right? So the ego essentially mediates ourselves and even our subconscious, right? So the first layer of meeting our subconscious, it's the ego that's going to encounter it, and that the first layer is our shadow.
Right.
Right? And that's like the part of ourselves that is the other word for the shadow is the alter ego.
Okay.
Right? The parts of ourselves that we don't want to show the world.
Right.
Right? Like here I am, I'm trying to look good on the podcast, right? I want to be presentable. I want to be likable. I want, you know what I mean? I want to be appreciated. Right, I'm not going to come here and...
You are.
Well, thank you. Good. Yeah. Trying. I'm not going to have a little fit tantrum because of something or that.
It's just your second podcast, so you're not there yet to be able to have fits.
Right.
Give yourself some time.
But we have a dark side. We have flaws. We have failings. And,
we definitely do have a lot of flaws.
And some of these we know well. Right?
Yeah.
And we keep in check and we manage them.
Right.
And then there's others that we have that we don't even know that we have.
Right. It's the what you don't know, and what you don't know you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you it's dangerous to assume that what you know about what you don't know is all that you don't know, right?
Exactly.
There's so much more that we don't know, and we don't know that we don't know.
Oh,
right? The don't know plane dimension is yeah, exactly.
It's huge.
Right.
Yeah.
So, that when we begin to acknowledge and accept that there's a shadow part of ourselves, then it can start to integrate, right? A big part of our self-growth is recognizing, acknowledging the I don't know part of myself.
Would it be like, would it be, let's say you're looking at your behavior and you're like, oh, this, like, I really didn't know why it went, sideways, basically? Like,
That's part of it. That's part of it. Like some self-reflection, like you look at your day and you think, why did that go to shits?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I had such good intentions and somehow everything fell apart.
Right.
And then if you're really honest with yourself, if you have a good, healthy ego, you're able to look at your behavior and be that was a mistake.
Right.
Right. And then when we acknowledge a mistake, there's a feeling of expansion.
Yeah.
Right. But we are afraid of
guilt. It really depends on.
Well, a guilt is a kind of denial. A guilt is not actually accepting a mistake.
Uh-huh.
A guilt is a way of, the guilty feeling is sneaky in that it actually perpetuates the negative behavior that is generating the guilt.
Right.
Right. A guilt is
you tense up and there's no movement.
It's a guilt is a weird emotional attempt at creating a feeling of balance. Right, but it doesn't actually work.
Who created these stupid feelings?
The guilt is an uncomfortable feeling. Well, our moral systems create the feelings of guilt. When we transgress what we feel is morally wrong, then the feeling of guilt is then generated, right? But where did the moral boundaries come from?
Right.
Right? Because we don't all have the same ones. You may do something and feel guilty about it, and I may do the same thing and feel good about it.
Right.
Right? Because our moral system is maybe slightly different.
Yeah.
I mean, fundamentally, it's probably similar.
Well, I mean, we're from the same culture.
Yeah,
we got a lot of references that are close.
Yes.
But your moral system and value system, is it the same for you? Because like the guilt or shame would be based on like what, there's morals and values. Do you think that they're the same?
I don't know. I mean, those are good questions. I mean, we could explore what is a value and what is a moral. I mean, they're certainly related.
Right.
But like it's interesting to consider this theme when we're discussing the shadow.
Right.
Because a lot of what is in the shadow is also what transgresses our moral values.
Right.
And and a lot of what's in the shadow is not intrinsically at a sort of universal scale immoral or wrong, but we simply believe that it is. Right? And so we deny ourselves these ways of being because we think they're wrong.
Right.
And so we actually deny parts of ourselves. That is, we reject parts of ourselves.
And do you think that, let's say I live guilt, let's say tomorrow, do you think like shadow is kind of like a bank that, it can get bigger and bigger and bigger, and after a while it just handicaps you to be able to have some great action? Like, should it be clean? Is it stuff? Should it be encountered, or should it be constantly?
That's an interesting way to put it. Yeah, if you deny shadow, if you have feelings that are arising in you, and these feelings make you uncomfortable, and so you ignore them.
Yeah.
Right. They will multiply and get bigger.
Right.
Until you can't ignore them anymore. When you think of stories like the horror stories of, these sexual abuses in the Catholic Church, you can. It's pretty plain and obvious to just about any normal person. I think that.
Right. That nobody wants to go there.
But I mean, these men are taking a vow to deny themselves their sexuality.
Right.
And they've made their sexuality this powerful force, a taboo.
Right.
And so inevitably what happens is that energy begins to grow, and then at one point there's something called the return of the repressed.
Okay.
Right? Like the horror movie.
That sounds like a zombie movie.
Yeah,
that sounds like pretty good.
It suddenly possesses the person. And has the person do horrific things.
Right.
Right? Because the accumulated energy is so strong. And the person has just no power to restrain themselves. Right? They're essentially possessed by those urges.
But yeah.
Right? And so this is why, like the worst of our behavior. Like, for example, you imagine, like, in a more simple situation, two new roommates live together. And they're trying to be friendly and trying to be harmonious.
Really bad situation. No, I'm kidding.
And so, one is messy and one is orderly.
Yeah.
Right? And the the messy one and the orderly one are getting slightly annoyed with each other.
Right.
You know, it's like, why is this guy so anal? Just cleaning up, you know. Why is this guy so messy?
Right.
You know, but hey, we're cool. We're cool. Yeah, we're cool. We're cool. But then the tension starts climbing, and then like 3 weeks later, then something bursts.
Right.
You know, just burst out. Right. And the person is yelling their head off at the other.
Right.
But actually, they wanted to get along. Why are they yelling their head off? Right. What's taking them over?
Yeah, it's just that it hasn't been addressed, and
it hasn't been acknowledged, hasn't been felt.
Communications, right?
Sure, communication is the way. Self-communication mostly.
Yeah, like that's it. Yeah. So what's the self-communication to be able to, after be able to talk to other people about, you know, what are your preferences and where should go?
Yeah, acknowledging those, you know, those movements within, and feeling, you know, just some of what they contain. But this is, you know, shadow is a most interesting principle when we start to think of the assets, the gold that it hides, right?
It's got gold.
Gold.
It's got gold.
It's got gold.
I want to be part of that one.
Yeah, don't we all? Yeah. It's the parts of ourselves that we're trying to become, but that we can never quite get to. Right? There's in fact a great little workshop that I lead sometimes with my partner Marianne.
Shameless plug.
Oh,
go.
Should I do that?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm not doing it now.
It's shameless.
But it's such a great exercise. Anyway, in this exercise, we explore how something that we react to strongly in others, and this is one of the ways we see our shadow. It's, you know, the things that we deny about ourselves, we tend to project onto others.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so those things that we react strongly to in others reflect something that is living within us that is unacceptable to us. And by somehow learning to make our moral system more flexible, you know, to allow that thing that we're reacting to, then it gives us access to ways of being that are, how to put it, exactly what we're trying to become, but seems out of reach to us. So, I'll give you a simple example.
Yeah, because I gotta, yeah.
It sounds vague.
Well, no,
let's say a child is brought up and told and taught that they're not to speak up.
Right.
It's, you know, that's every time they try to speak up, they get scolded, reprimanded, and they find that when they're just quiet and sweet, then they get a lot of love, they get a lot of affection.
Yep.
So they integrate that way of being, right? They start to believe as adults that, you know, being quiet is a more appropriate way of being.
Right. Because we all have systems that are like, you know, a few years older than us, and that we should break down and pass to it. Well, maybe it's not everybody that's got that.
But they have a moral system that it's good to be quiet, and it's bad to speak.
Right.
Right? But then life's inevitably going to put that person in situations where it's not good to be quiet.
Definitely.
And it would be much better to speak.
Definitely.
But because they have integrated into their system,
and it's been reinforced by
to speak is bad, they just can't do it.
Right.
Right? It's like they just don't know how. They've lost access to that.
Yeah.
And so they may be in a room, you know, in a situation, let's say a work situation, and it's time to speak, and they can't do it. But their neighbor, this, you know what I mean, the new kid on the block, he's got no problem.
Right.
He was raised to speak. His parents encouraged him. Right. Every time he could, his parents was like, "Great, yes, let me hear what you think." Right. And he just knows how to, you know, process his thoughts and just let it out. And he's outgoing. This person, who, you know, sitting next to them, who believes that it's wrong to speak, sees this person doing something that he thinks is wrong.
Right.
So he's going to interpret that with a lot of negativity. It's going to appear shadowy.
Yeah, like pour qui il se prend, like who's that
this
person?
Is wrong.
Why?
This person is arrogant. How dare he?
Yeah.
How could he be doing this?
Right.
And so that's what you call a shadow projection.
Right.
Because this person's behavior is a reflection of a transgression of values of some kind. However, the person, because of their values, is inhibiting their own capacity to speak up.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So by stretching their values, by training themselves to realize that it is good to speak,
Yeah.
right? Which is not easy to do, right? It's a very difficult thing to stretch our values system, our moral system.
Oh, definitely. You need to acknowledge, first of all, that you got that it needs to be stretched.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you got to be willing to do
Well,
it.
behavior that you react to suddenly look at it as something positive. It's a tricky, experiment. But it's the necessary key for that person to be the outspoken person they wish to become.
Right.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so that's the gold.
Well, if they wish to become that, or else, yeah, I understand. I was thinking about one thing. When you meditate a lot, or when you do like certain inner work that you don't really work on the shadow per se, but it helps to tone down the emotions, right? Like as in big, let's say I do my Tai Chi and my Neigong for 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
But let's say not even, like a good 30-minute, but a really, really well-placed 30-minute. A lot of things could go on around me, but I would not really mind about it. We've all learned to tame down our emotions at the same time in the life, so that we have different, so that we can have like a normal social life. But that's not really working on the shadow to try to find out what's going on, right?
It depends on the approach and the attitude. It can work on the shadow because it can enhance your awareness.
Right.
Right? And so the nature of the shadow is to be hidden.
Uh-huh.
And when you expand your awareness,
right,
then you expand your capacity to feel into the subtle and into the shadow. So you can give room for, the shadowy content to manifest itself without the tendency to quickly repress it. It's like the shadow will come knocking on the door, and you have enough equanimity of spirit to open the door and allow it
to be like
sit at the table.
Yeah.
Right? And that's when it has the capacity to transform.
Right.
And offer its gold.
Right.
Right? If it remains a frightening figure,
right,
then it's always denied. It's always repressed at some level. So the practices of the meditative practices, the Qigong practices, the Nikong practices, they have the capacity to undo the reactive tendencies.
Yes.
Right? And it's the reactive tendencies that magnify the shadow.
So it would undo the reactive tendencies, and by doing that, the shadow could just, like you said.
That's right.
You're like, oh, okay.
It is welcome. And as soon as it is welcome, then
it's not the shadow anymore.
It's not the shadow anymore. Light shines upon it.
Right. Yeah. This is very inspiring.
Oh, good. So that's the shadow.
Yeah. All right. So now we got
the persona,
we got the ego, and we got the shadow.
Yes.
There's two others to do.
So the next layer the next encounter with the subconscious, as we begin to integrate the shadow, is what Carl Jung calls the anima animus.
Okay.
So the anima is the inner woman in a man, and the animus is the inner man in a woman.
Okay.
And he described.
I was gonna ask you a question just about that before you went into it, so it's okay. It's good. Yeah.
So according to Jung, there's an otherness quality to our subconscious. The subconscious, he really believed, was an autonomous entity within us.
Okay.
And so already that alone, I find, even though I've been exploring these principles for years, the idea that these parts that are autonomous, or even this field that is, the psychic field within us that is autonomous, that is different than us, separate from us, but a part of us at the same time.
Yeah. It's freaky.
It is. It's not
like
how we
notion.
live. It's a kind of duality.
Right.
Right. And we identify or believe ourselves to be a singularity.
Right.
Right. And so it's a different way of operating. It's like there's, and so because of the otherness to this dimension, he says there's the conscious domain and the unconscious field domain. The unconscious field is often represented as the opposite sex.
Okay.
Right? And so this is really like the, the body of our subconscious and all of its creative power. Right? And depending on our relationship with life, or it's essentially our relationship with the magic and the principle and the energy of life.
Okay.
Right. And that's why, for example, when we fall in love, right, or we're suddenly engaging someone of the opposite sex, or I mean, these of course are flexible when people are, of different kinds of sexual orientations.
Right.
But that same energy, and this is where it gets a little, I get a little unsure about these principles. For example, how do they apply for people of different sexual preferences? And I don't have the answer to those questions. But that in love feeling,
right,
that is such a great and big feeling. It's like the feeling we're all looking for.
Oh yeah.
Right. That's when, according to Jung, we're in contact with the anima animus field. Right. And we feel most inspired and most creative and most capable, and ideas are flowing, like at their most creative and they're most free, and when we feel most liberated. Now. He says that feeling of falling in love is an anima-animus projection, meaning that the qualities we're seeing in the other are actually inherent qualities in us,
right,
and we're seeing them in the other,
right,
and we want to be, I mean, the person may or may not have these qualities, right.
We'll know after,
right. But those they may or they may not, but they'll certainly have more than that.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
But in that moment, we're not able to see more than that.
Right.
Right? But little by little, as we engage the relationship, the projection starts to fade, and then
reality.
And then we see, we meet the shadow of the other.
Right.
Right? And then the relationship has the potential to reach a whole new level of depth, if that part can also be integrated.
Right.
But in any case, to get back to
the anima animus would be a temporary state, like love, or it's just something that we really have a hard time tapping in our daily lives?
Well, no, it's not a temporary state in that it's an archetype that lives within us.
Okay.
And depending on the relationship we have with it within ourselves will affect how we perceive it in the other. Now, the less contact we have with it within ourselves, the stronger the outer projection will be. Right?
Okay.
So, for example, when we fall completely hopelessly in love with someone,
right,
and the other person is not interested, and there's no return, but yet somehow we don't let go.
I got that with Miley Cyrus right now. Okay.
Really? Is Miley Cyrus a reflection of your anima, your inner anima?
Actually, no, but no, I was just making a bad joke.
Right.
But yeah.
I mean,
I'll ask you for a few tricks to.
I mean, you can get a sense of the shape of your anima right now, or by what it is that generates the kind of woman you tend to fall in love with.
Right. Yeah.
And as our inner relationship grows, then the kind of woman we fall in love with will evolve.
Definitely,
it'll get more balanced.
Like that's what I saw, or I mean, it seems like I tend to fall in love with people that can, or with women that can bring me something that I don't have. Like the other one was really like a traveler, a lot of trips and stuff like that.
Right,
and
exactly.
I was like really like more, of masculine essence of building something really big, and then we kind of switched. I really got a lot of these qualities that I wanted to explore. That I wouldn't really give myself the chance to explore them because I thought that stuff needed to be in a certain structure and a certain order.
Sure.
So yeah.
Yeah, but I mean that potential existed all along.
Right. Yeah.
Right, but you weren't giving yourself permission to access it.
Yeah, or else I wouldn't be able to love that thing that you can't love what you don't know. You don't know.
Well, let's say you had not let yourself grow that way. You might have then associated those qualities with that person. And you might have thought, I cannot ever experience those qualities unless
if I'm not with that
person.
Oh yeah.
And then you would not be able to let go of that person.
Right.
Right? Because you would be stuck in this belief. But really all it is trying to accessing that lives within you, that all along.
Yeah.
And so, as your inner anima grows and develops, then,
right, exactly.
Then you appropriate for yourself those qualities and those attitudes.
Right. And the next relationship might not be, because I'm not, since I gave myself these these qualities that I wanted.
But you essentially grew those seeds.
And the archetype grew. So
yeah, exactly.
Oh, nice. Now I can really picture it, and like it makes a lot more sense, let's say, in my mind right now.
Great.
I'm not going to say epiphany, but we're pretty close.
Okay. And well, then as that gets integrated, then we meet the deepest archetype of all, which Jung called the self. Right? Now, again, he's using the word in a particular way.
Right.
But essentially, it was the core of our being, the absolute luminosity of our soul. Right? This a part of us that is untouched by the slings and arrows and the vicissitudes of life. Right?
Yeah.
This pure, luminous, loving essence. It's like the Godhead within. Right?
Do you think that the self is immovable? Is it like perfected?
Is it perfected?
Or does it grow?
Good question. According to Jung, as far as I know, it's already perfect.
Yeah.
And it is. So
it's just playing tricks on you.
It's not playing tricks on us. No, it's the opposite. It's leading us back to it.
Okay.
Right. So according to Jung, this is what gives us our intuition. Our faculty, when we know things that we don't even know how we know, but we know that we know. Like you go into a room and suddenly you feel like you're just where you're meant to be, right?
Right.
Or you go into a room and you have the opposite feeling. You are not meant to be there. How do you know that?
Right.
What's giving you that information?
And serendipity, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So according to Jung, it was interesting. This is what one of the things that differentiated from Freud. Like the unconscious is invisible, and so the only way we can kind of get to know it is by creating models. So, Jung created his models. There are different models.
Right.
Freud also created a model.
Yeah.
And Freud's model of the subconscious was that it was the dark closet that contained everything repressed.
Right.
So everything inside was
just bad, just sexually bad.
Yeah, and just things that you didn't want to know about, and and it was influencing us in all sorts of ways. So Jung acknowledged that was there, but he said there was more, right? There's this self, there's this luminosity. It's like the gifts that exist within us that we haven't even developed yet.
Right.
And it arises in us in forms of things like curiosity. Why are we curious about certain things?
Yeah, why do we want to have a drive to do a certain thing?
Yeah, I give an example sometimes in my classes if two people are walking down the street and they see a store window full of antiques. Right, and it's a window that's full of different things, and they both stop and both go, "Oh, wow, look at that!" But they're not looking at the same thing.
Right.
One's looking at this little, figurine here, and one's looking at this, old, ancient thing.
Yeah.
Why are they even interested in that?
Right.
What's generating that? It's an interesting for me idea to think about. Why are we interested in the things that we're interested in? That spark is offering a path. Right? When we follow the things that we're curious about, right, they inevitably develop into things that we are passionate about, right? Curiosity is the baby brother of passion.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And these are not things that we choose.
Yeah.
We don't choose.
Or else you're very curious, and then there's sometimes you can stop. You're curious until you're not curious about that because you've grasped it, and then you can go and grab some different things.
Sure. Absolutely.
But,
yeah.
Because
it always leads to something of some sort of personal value.
Right.
And it may be of no value to anybody else, but to you it's valuable. And so you've pursued your curiosity until your curiosity is satisfied.
Yeah.
And then you have the feeling of knowing something.
Right.
Right. And that's a powerful thing, to feel like you've understood something. Right. And that creates a connection and leads you to the next thing you're curious about.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that grows. And then giving ourselves permission to follow our curiosity, for me, is the ultimate freedom. And that's when we need to look at, for example, our inhibitions, and the morality that is created, shadow parts that are keeping us from the freedom to pursue the things we want to pursue.
Could you please repeat that?
Yes. So, the moral systems that we're brought up in are truly inhibiting when they are creating shadow parts that is having us deny parts of ourselves, that are having us deny the capacity to follow the things we seek to follow, pursue the things we seek to pursue.
Definitely.
Do you know?
Yeah.
People often...
Well, I mean, there's definitely these moral values, but...
well, they're invisible. And I don't mean the moral values that we know.
Yeah, it's not even...
It's like a subtle, invisible force that prevents us from doing the things we want to do.
Right. Yeah.
Why are you not doing all the things you want to do? Why am I not doing all the things that I want to do?
Why are you not doing all the things that you want to do?
Because there's some sort of moral system that has me believe on a subconscious level that I'll be doing something wrong, or I will be wrong if I do that.
Yeah.
And
you probably will.
I mean,
that's my new... Well, it's not even my new, but I know that I'll be wrong. I know that I'll suck. I'll know that I'll do like a few things not... I know it's not going to be perfect.
But I don't mean suck like that. I mean suck... Whoops.
Whoop.
I mean wrong in the sense that it's going to generate shame.
Right.
It's going to generate, guilt. It's going to... It's like...
it's going to be really bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so, that's a lack of freedom.
Right. Oh, I think it definitely is to... I'm wondering to what extent we are free, because I agree that curiosity... Well, I mean, curiosity is such a blessing to be curious and to take action in that curiosity and to be able to see what unfolds. That's a bit like this experiment, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm curious about having a podcast, and after you're like, oh,
good job.
I need to be curious about people.
Yeah.
And then like curiosity brings it and see what unfolds and how like what grows out of that, how I grow out of that also is interesting. But people, and I found out that like external judgment is way smaller or almost non-existent compared to what I thought.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's
that's a good realization.
Oh, well, I mean, especially like with the social medias and all of that. I posted like a video of a movement a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I posted a few, and I thought in the beginning that some old school guys, like, or I don't know, like 500 people were going to tell me that I sucked, and didn't happen. Just once a while, there was one old school guy like on top of his, I don't know, mountain of shit. That's like, well, you shouldn't do it that way. And you're like, okay, yeah, sure. Like, so there's for that particular thing, it's not really like the backlash is not as hard as I thought that life would do it.
Good for you.
Yeah,
that's a realization I'd certainly like to have. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you will. Well, we'll do a lot of content.
Inshallah, that would be nice. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I'll help you with that one.
Okay, thank you.
Do you think that we always need to so let's say, because you're saying the ego is the one that makes us communicate with the other archetypes, right?
Yeah,
it's like
mediates, you might say. Yeah,
mediates. Yeah, sure. Just communicate, like it seems like it's all even more outside of ourselves, right? Can you go and talk to the animus without talking to the shadow? Like, do you need to go to the shadow first and after knit that and after go to the self? Or like, is it a linear system?
No, I don't know. I can't probably answer that. I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these things are really, really mysterious, and we're always interacting.
That's so cool.
We're always interacting with our inner animus, anima figure, and our shadow figures, and our inner self. It's
right.
And essentially, these are the characters that are going to populate our dreams. Right? So essentially our dreams tend to be variations in different forms of these main characters, right? We'll meet the shadowy figures in the way that we're experiencing them these days, which are the parts of ourselves that we're denying, and we'll meet these animus figures, these sexual figures that inspire us in different ways. So I don't think so. I wouldn't say it's linear. It tends to unfold kind of simultaneously. Yeah. Do you pay